Welcome. Today's webinar is about something that I think is really kind of concerns most attorneys out there, because most attorneys are really, and law students are trying to get into the very best firms that they can, most prestigious firms where they want to make the most money. And so a lot of people, their whole careers are kind of guided by that goal. And what I'm going to talk about today is why, for a lot of people, that particular goal is not a good one. I will say at the outset that the most successful attorneys that I know, with only a couple of exceptions, are not people that are working in the largest firms and, frankly, have never worked in the largest firms and often had a lot of difficulty getting hired when they were in law school, and then have kind of bounced around between firms for a lot of their career. So what I'm going to talk about right now is why it's not a good idea for the majority of attorneys out there to set that as a goal. There's nothing wrong with having a goal, but I want to tell you kind of the things that you're going to be up against if you try to do that. In 25 years of doing this, I can tell you that often attorneys can be very, very happy in large law firms. And I know tons of them that love it and are really motivated by it. And they're motivated as associates and they're motivated as partners. But for majority of attorneys out there, I do not believe that this is often a good goal for you. And the reason being, and I'll talk about it today, is you're putting yourself in competition with people that are likely to beat you. So why would you want to put yourself in that sort of position? Why would you want to be in a position where you may be unlikely, you're going to be unlikely to succeed at the level that you're capable of? And again, the most successful attorneys that I know and the happiest attorneys that I know, for the most part, I mean, I would say 80% are people that could never get into the largest law firms. So that's what I'm going to talk to you about today. Is this something that you want to do? Is this something that's a good goal for you? Are you going to be happier with this goal or not having this goal? And these are questions that we're going to answer today. And, just right at the outset, I mean, I've seen so many people spend months and years trying to get into these large law firms when it's not necessarily the right thing for them. And it may be right for you, and I hope it is. I mean, my career and most of the money that I've ever made is over 50% getting people into large law firms, so they tend to share certain characteristics. So I think this will be very useful for you. It will be very useful for you setting goals for yourself. It will be very useful for you potentially not wasting time. It'll be very useful for you if you do have the skills that are good for top law firms. It will show you that you belong there. And what I can teach you today, and why what I'm teaching is important, is I've been doing this for 25 years, and my entire livelihood and the livelihood of my family, livelihood of my ability to eat and so forth, is dependent upon recognizing people with the right skills to work in law firms and the right background. So that's what I'm going to talk about. Now, I want to say a couple of things at the outset as well. You can get into major law firms regardless of the school that you went to. I mean, there are some exceptions of unaccredited law schools and things that are going to make it very difficult, but people do get into top law firms that never thought they could get there. People do get into top law firms that may not have been in great law firms when they were out of law school and don't have the top grades. They get into top law firms and have done it. Partners, people are able to, maybe the 10 years out, they didn't have the skills or background to get into top law firms, but maybe 15 years out, they suddenly do and are hired at top AM law firms. So none of this is impossible, but I do want to teach you today about understanding what is out there, what are the obstacles that you may be up against. Just a quick aside too, this is a live webinar, so I would encourage you, if you have questions, just to write them down during the webinar, and I will answer them if you put them in the chat in the webinar. And I think questions are very important because I can guide you on different things that you may be doing right or wrong in your career. So there are 4 qualities that I've learned, again, over 25 years, that attorneys need to be successful in the largest, most competitive firms. This is also what law firms are looking at when they're reviewing your applications. And the qualities are intelligence, your work ethic, your ability to persevere, and social intelligence. And so some people have 2 of these and they're able to do okay. Some people have 3, but the ones that have all 4 tend to be the ones that they succeed. And these qualities, by the way, you don't need all of these qualities to work in all law firms, but you need to come pretty close to work within the largest law firms and succeed there. And if you don't have these qualities, but you still wish to practice law, then you can consider careers outside of major law firms. And frankly, most attorneys, like the substantial percentage, probably over 90%, are not working in major law firms. And yet people feel that if they don't do that there's something wrong with them. And it's just not true. I mean, again, you can work in tons of different places, but you want to put yourself in a position where you can succeed. And so what does that mean? I'll go into a lot of detail about this over the course of the webinar. But if you were a amateur tennis player and suddenly you were thrown onto a professional tennis team, you just probably wouldn't do as well. I mean, it's just how it is. Some people have natural skills to do certain things, and some people have different sorts of backgrounds and skill sets. And if you don't have them, it's not the end of the world. There's other places for you. And a lot of attorneys, I've seen this happen countless times, go into law firms where they just don't have this intelligence, work ethic, and all these perseverance and other skills. And then they're cast out and they feel like there's something wrong with them. And a lot of them drop out of the practice of law, or other attorneys never get started because they don't have that. They go into other careers. And, so if you don't have high levels of these characteristics of intelligence, work ethic, perseverance, and social intelligence, it's not probably a good use of your time to try to get a job and work in the largest law firms. Now, I'm not saying that you can't develop those skills once you get into a top law firm. You start learning from very, very good attorneys and you become proficient in that, and that happens. But a lot of times you have to be concerned about putting yourselves in situations where your innate skills are not rewarded. And that also goes, by the way, for if you, not just big law, but if you want to work in certain small law firms, you may be in a practice area where you're not setting yourself up for success. You may be in positions where you're working with people that have different skills than you, and you don't believe you're going to develop those skills, and so you're not going to be in the right atmosphere. Just as I mentioned at the beginning of this presentation, I know so many attorneys that are just incredibly successful that never got jobs in top law firms, and some of them never got jobs at all, or they just got jobs working for $20 an hour inside of a law firm, and now they're just so successful. I mean, making tens of millions of dollars in some case per year doing things, and very happy and motivated. So that's what I would like to what I'm going to talk to you about today. But I'm also going to talk to you about why large law firms and very competitive firms and different types of firms are not a good fit for you. Because if you put yourself in the wrong position, you're not going to advance and you're not going to thrive, and you're going to always feel like you're behind. And why would you put yourself in that situation? You need to put yourself in situations where you're going to be getting the most positive reinforcement possible, and you're also going to believe that you're going to succeed in the long run. So these qualities, intelligence, work ethic, ability to persevere, and social and emotional intelligence are what I'm going to talk to you about today. And you need to think about these when you're trying to work in the largest law firms. Now, the first thing I'm going to talk to you about intelligence to succeed in large law firms is something that's probably offensive. And me even saying this is something that could be taken as offensive. But if you want to work in the largest law firms, you have to be intelligent, and you have to be often very intelligent. Your ability to do well in standardized tests like the LSAT and the SAT are important. The SAT, by the way, was developed as an IQ test originally by the Army. And so they gave all their recruits that wanted to use that to see how intelligent people were. But I think it was up until like 1995, and you can look this up. The score you got on the SAT was actually correlated to your intelligence. And now, intelligence just means the ability to come up with novel solutions to problems, to see things that average people don't, to be able to see deeply into problems and things, and then to be able to sort through a lot of information, to be able to make good arguments or come up with novel things and transactions. And I can tell you that, having worked in large law firms, there were always people there that were just beyond intelligent. I mean, you could show them a problem and they could come up with a solution that no one else would. And, in litigation, if you're a litigator in a large law firm, you're going to be up against other attorneys. And those other attorneys, depending on their intelligence, will be able to see into problems more deeply, will be able to deconstruct your arguments. If you're arguing against them in motions and briefs, they will be able to recognize different weaknesses and things and of what people may be doing and be better. There's different types of litigation. Commercial litigation is basically companies hiring large law firms to litigate on their behalf when there's serious business problems. And when they have these serious business problems, they want to have the smartest attorneys with the best pedigrees. Now, none of this is to say that someone that wants to be a litigator can't do other types of things like insurance defense or workers' compensation or family law or personal injury. A lot of those practice areas, especially personal injury, are basically someone's hurt, someone's liable. Let's figure out how much money we can get. It's not always making the most complex arguments and complaints and things. It's the same thing in patent prosecution. There's a patent examiner, and the patent attorney needs to be able to be very smart, put together why something's a patent, and be able to get past the patent exam. The better the patent attorney, the better off the better they'll be with that. And so all of these contexts where an attorney's practicing law really come down to the one that's most intelligent is the one that's most likely to come up with best solutions and cause their client to prevail. I remember, this is just kind of an aside, I had, there was a rabbi that I knew. He actually performed my wedding, and he had an attorney that had a very, very smart guy. He had grown up in New York. He had graduated from high school at the age of 15. He was so smart, he got full rides to Harvard Law School and Berkeley. He wanted to be in California. So this guy that's 19 enrolled in law school at Berkeley. And when he got out of law school, he was very young and people weren't hiring him. And so this rabbi asked me if I would hire him, and I did. And he was my in-house attorney, and I couldn't believe it. Like, he would take things and issues that other attorneys would sit down and work for in weeks and just come up with these very elegant, credible solutions to win things. And that's what really good attorneys do. I mean, you can figure something out in like 15 minutes. And that's the same thing that happens in law firms or people like that. So in a lot of contexts, the attorney that's the most intelligent is going to be able to out-argue, smart people in transactions, all sorts of things that other people that don't have that level of intelligence aren't able to do. And that means that anytime you put yourself in a position where your client is a company, a large company, or someone that's very, very wealthy, can afford to hire the best attorneys, you're going to be up against people that are intelligent, very intelligent. It's like firms are almost like law schools. Like if you want to go to Yale Law School, you're going to have to do really, really well in your SATs and other things. It's the same thing with a lot of the best law firms like Sullivan & Cromwell and Wachtell. And as you move down the line, everything is going to be very, very important. If you look at the top law schools or the top law firms, you can see that the attorneys have these pedigrees that mean that they did incredibly well in the LSAT, probably incredibly well in college, and probably incredibly well in law school, outsmarting and getting better grades than other people that were there. And this is what the top law firms have. And people that are in these top law firms typically, not always, but did incredibly well on their SATs and LSATs. They have a natural ability to figure out problems that is better than 95 to 98% of all people taking these tests. And they've had that smarts and ability at every stage of their academic lives. I mean, this is what these people are. And it's not all of them, but it's most of them. And that's what you're up against when you try to go into these firms. And it's the same thing with the companies that the attorneys are representing. I mean, they want to have the absolute best and smartest attorneys working on their problems, and they're willing to pay money for them. General counsels of companies that are hiring attorneys are looking at the pedigrees of the people that are representing them, and that means something to them. And general counsel that have the ability to, and the budgets to hire the best attorneys are going to hire firms that have the attorneys with the best academic pedigrees. And that's just how it works. And it doesn't mean that you have to have that to be successful, but or even need to be a rock star test taker. I mean, you can learn all this stuff, and some people just aren't good test takers. But it's important to understand that if you're going to compete with people that are, I'm not trying to be rude here, but are extremely smart and have the ability to figure things out that the average attorney doesn't, then you're going to be in trouble up against them. You're going to be in trouble because the work you do in the firm probably isn't going to be as good. You're going to be in trouble because you're not getting good results for clients and all these sorts of things. So it's very common when I remember, coming up, when you come up against like an attorney in a smaller market comes up against someone from a big firm in New York. I mean, they're always scared, and the attorney from New York always believes that they have, a real advantage. I just remember seeing that when I was in the Midwest. And then if you're trying to get jobs in these firms, you're going to come up with a lot of resistance. And people are going to be acutely aware of your law school, of your grades, and all this sort of stuff in whatever firm you go to. So, the smartness is something to think about, and how it works and why it's important any firm you go to have these natural smarts. Now, the most successful attorneys I know don't have those smarts. They have other skills. They might have people skills. They have the ability to get business, to to negotiate things very well. But you just need to be very acutely aware that these are things that are important. And when a general counsel is speaking to attorneys that are representing them in a law firm, they're expecting them to see and come up with solutions to problems that the general counsel couldn't. They need someone that is able to do very good work and make the company money. And they're going to want to save the company money and not expose them to liability or just chase people that may owe the company money. So they will hire people that they believe have that. They will pick it up when you talk to them, and they will also be aware of your background. And, having this ability to understand problems, to figure things out quickly, to come up with, ideas and things that are impressing the attorneys you're working with and partners you're working with, or if you're a partner doing the same thing with clients, are very important. And so what I'm telling you is when you try to go up against and compete with the smartest people and you don't have those smarts, then you may be better off doing something else or getting in a law firm or getting into a niche where you're not competing with a lot of people, where your work isn't being evaluated as closely. I see some interesting stuff. Just an aside, I place a lot of partners, and when I'm working with partners, sometimes I'll see someone that went to like a 4th-tier law school but is doing like ERISA and the only ERISA attorney in the law firm, or they have this kind of niche and then they do well. And other people that don't have these sorts of smarts to go to the best law schools and do well there and take the LCTs often get into large law firms, and they have extremely good social skills, and the ability to bring in business and the ability to navigate social situations that makes them do very well. And it doesn't matter whether, but for the most part, this level of intelligence is important. If you did poorly in law school and you were trying your hardest and you didn't do well, or you didn't do well in college and you were trying your hardest and you didn't do well in the LSAT, trying to put yourself in competition with people that can do this stuff naturally is crazy. Like when I was in law school, I didn't know how people were getting all A's on their law school exams. I didn't know what they were doing differently, but there's something about that, the ability to spot issues and problems that they, had. And so, you don't want to put yourself a lot of times in this position. Why would you try to compete at a level where you're going to come up against so much resistance? So, just think about that. I mean, when I was in law firms, I did see people that were hired that didn't have these intellectual abilities, and they missed things, and people working with them, partners and things, would see that and be frustrated and try to help them, but it never made anything happen. So, just thinking about this. So, it's no different, again, like I gave you an example of someone that's a Division IV basketball player trying to walk on and start playing with the Los Angeles Lakers. They're not going to have maybe the height or the skills to compete at that level. And there's nothing wrong with that. It just means maybe they need to do something else in a different type of setting. So I would just, submit to you that if I really wanted to be an astrophysicist and get a PhD in it, if I enrolled at the California Institute of Technology, having only 3 semesters of calculus and took high school physics, I probably wouldn't do very well. It's just, I don't have that natural ability. And if I got in there and tried to do it, people would be figuring out things that I couldn't figure out. Or if I figured them out, it would take me a long time. And people would be just talking over my head. I wouldn't know what's going on. And that's because I'm not smart enough to go and get a PhD at the California Institute of Technology. Not even close. If I was expected to argue an important matter in the United States Supreme Court and brief it, I probably wouldn't do that well. And, so in my recruiting practice, I see, people that are always trying to work in major law firms in major markets with the highest salary. And they keep that as a goal. They keep wanting to do it. They don't know why they're getting rejected. And sometimes they might get into these firms. I don't know how, but they may. And if they do, they're typically not going to do well. And, why would someone that, didn't do very well in a 4th-tier Midwestern law school want to work in the most prestigious New York firms? I mean, this is crazy. Like they're not going to get a job there. There's too much competition. There's people that have better pedigrees and too many people in New York with top pedigrees trying to get into these firms. I mean, New York City, by the way, is so competitive that if you go to Harvard Law School and you work in a major firm for a couple of years and you lose your job, no one cares. Like there's more people that are employed that are at Harvard Law School, went to Harvard Law School applying for the same jobs. It's very, very competitive. So why would you think that you can get a job in one of these top law firms if there's too many people competing for those jobs already. I mean, you're setting yourself up for failure. And even if you do get the job, sometimes people get these jobs through contacts and things. You're probably not going to do well. It's just how it is. And I'm not criticizing you for maybe not having those natural skills, but your skills just need to be applied in a different way. That's all. You need to be in a different practice area. You need to be in a different type of firm. And just at the outset, I'll tell you two types of firms. So, and you have firms that represent companies, meaning their companies are writing checks to law firms. And so that work will often need to be pretty good. I mean, you'll have to be the best people working on it. And there's more competition because companies can write big checks for a long period of time. And so firms can pay them more money. And that's just the type of law. So there's law firms that represent companies. Then there's law firms that represent individuals. And those are practice areas, again, like family law, immigration, personal injury, just even insurance defense, representing people that were in auto accidents. I mean, there's all these consumer workers' compensation, all these types of law firms where you're representing individuals. And so if you don't have what it takes to work in companies that are representing or firms that are representing companies, you're probably going to do much better in firms where you're representing individuals. And I can't tell you how successful and happy I've seen people that do that. So that's what you really need to be thinking about. Should I be working in a very competitive market where I'm representing companies, or should I be working someplace where I'm more likely to have success representing individuals? When you're representing individuals don't know anything about your legal skills or where you went to law school. They just want a certain result. And so representing them is something that is much better. I mean, and by the way, I mean, skills like negotiating ability, getting people, bringing in clients that are individuals, these are all skills that people can develop outside of working in major law firms. So I don't like it when people try to put themselves in situations where they're not going to succeed. If you're intellectually outmatched, and most people are in large law firms, then you're not going to do well because people are going to be smarter than you and people are going to pick up on it, and you're not going to advance, and you're going to come up against a lot of resistance. You're going to feel badly about yourself. And why do that? Why put yourself in that position? Now, it's not to say that you can't go to firms where you represent companies. I mean, there are small companies that need people to represent them. There are firms in small markets where there's companies that not enough attorneys. I mean, there's all sorts of ways you can do it, but putting yourself into competition, most highest competition markets, is not something people like. I mean, it can make them feel badly about practicing law. It can make them feel like they should drop out. And then when they get to these places and don't do well, they may not get the best references. And then they may feel like they don't belong in the profession, where they could succeed if they made better choices, if they went to firms where they might have been representing small companies, or they went into practice areas where they were representing individuals. And so it doesn't mean that you can't get to that level. I personally believe that people that may not have the top intelligence to work in the largest law firms, they can get jobs in these law firms. And if they do things right, they can excel and they can learn the skills and that the best attorneys have. But it's not something that happens very often. And it's just something that you need to think about. Like, why am I trying to compete at this level? Is that something that I should be doing? And I firmly believe that you try to be in the best firm you possibly can. And I don't see anything wrong with that. But I also want you to be prepared that if you are able to get those jobs, which I have a course called Big Law Breakthrough that can show anyone how to do this, then you're going to, feel, badly by yourself if it doesn't work. So you need to put yourself into situations where you can excel, where you're better than people you're competing with, where if you work very hard, you're going to do well. And it can mean anything from the type of firm you're in to the practice area. But I have to stress that this is important. And many times, I would say more than 50% of the time, the most intelligent people that are just, that's all they have, don't last in large law firms either. So it's not just a question of intelligence saying you're going to last a long time, but you need to be able to have that. And sometimes people that may not have that natural intelligence have an incredible work ethic that just blows people away. They have the ability to persevere in the face of resistance. And then they have social intelligence that they use to position themselves as the best attorneys in their law firm if they, if when they get there, even if they don't have this natural intelligence. So I'm not saying you can't do it if you don't have it. You can make it up crazy way with really good social intelligence and do well. And that's something to think about. I remember when I was practicing law, there was an attorney in the second law firm I was in, and she had gone to these just terrible schools. Like, I mean, I don't even remember, like, some religious college in South Carolina or something, and then Oral Roberts University for law school, and hadn't really done well there. But she had incredible social intelligence. She was able to position herself in an incredible and just in a massive way, like getting president of bar associations and all these committees, and just being very competitive and aggressive with other attorneys in her firm. And she was able to get by, do well with that. So you can do well, but I'm just trying to remind you right at the outset that this is something important to think about. And the more you think about it, the better you'll do. So if you have any questions about this particular one, I saw some people raising their hand. I will be more than happy to talk about it when we have questions and answers. So the next thing is your work ethic to succeed in major firms. I think that everyone is aware of this. I don't know who isn't aware of it, but when you're working in any law firm, your job is to make that firm profitable. That's your job as an associate, and then that's also your job as a partner. If you're an associate, your profitability is going to be based on how many hours you work. And working hours is not as easy as it sounds, because you can certainly work a lot of hours, but you're only going to have work to do if people think your work is good. So you need to be able to do good work, get repeat work for partners, and then you need to be able to get work from other partners. So you're always busy and always have a lot of work. And that's kind of the key, one of the major keys to doing well in major law firms, is just being able to get work from other people and get lots of hours. And the people with the most hours are often the most valuable, and not just because they build those hours, but because it makes it look like they're able to develop business and work from people within the law firm. When a partner becomes a partner, their job is to bring in work and hours from people outside the law firm and find work to be done and work as many hours as they possibly can for them to be profitable as well. So, certain clients will need lots of work, others won't, but you need to understand that your work ethic and billing as many hours as you possibly can is extremely important. I remember when I gave notice at the first firm I worked at, and they liked me a lot, and I never should have left. It was a mistake. But I was complaining to a partner that someone didn't, that I liked, and I thought should make partner, didn't make partner, and someone else did. And he said, well, the person that didn't make partner only billed 2,600 hours last year, and the person that did make partner billed 28. And I was like, that's crazy. Like 200 hours determines whether or not you're going to be a partner. And different practice areas have different demands. So corporate can have huge demands when there's transactions and things and litigation at different times. But sometimes, you're going to need to work 7 days a week. You're going to get calls, early Sunday morning, emails, text. So when you're in a large law firm, I mean, this is often going to happen again and again and again. You always have to be ready. The work can be very stressful. Clients expect the work done immediately, and they need to close transactions or go to court for things. And that's really what they need. And so your job as an attorney in a large law firm is to be incredibly responsive to clients and do as much work as you possibly can to get a lot of hours in. People get in the door at large law firms with great qualifications, and they get there and their work ethic isn't to par, or they're not willing to work these sort of hours and they don't like it, and they think that a lot of times they just burn out, think I shouldn't practice law anymore. But this is what big law firms are about. They're about billing a lot of hours, and law firms will advance people and keep them around based on the number of hours. So if a practice area slows down, the person that's able to continually billing the most hours is going to be the one that advances, and people will make partner based on the number of hours that they work. And it's the same thing with partners in law firms. Partners in law firms always try to maintain the most hours, so they're even competitive with associates for hours. I mean, partners will get printouts sometimes every week or emails that will show how many hours different attorneys billed the previous week, how many hours they billed that year. And partners will read these, and they'll know who's busy and who's not. And they will also compare themselves to other partners in the firm based on how many hours they bill. So people always want to be at the top. It's something that doesn't just happen when you're an associate. It's something that happens your entire career. And because it's so important, you need to think about, does this make me happy? Now, for me, by the way, when I was working in large law firms, it actually did make me happy to bill lots of hours because I liked the work. I thought it was just a blast writing motions and talking to clients and going to court and all these things. I thought it was like monkeys in a barrel. It was just a lot of fun, but not many people are like that. When I was in large law firms, it gave me energy to work on things. It made me excited, but a lot of people aren't like that. And if you're not like that, you may be in the wrong practice area. But every attorney that I know that does well is excited by the work, and they really don't mind a lot of times billing these hours. It can have a tremendous toll on your health, but they often very like it a great deal. So you should try to be in a practice area and a practice setting where you're happy and where you're doing the kind of work that you want. And if you just detest working long hours, then I would submit to you that it's not always a good idea for you to be practicing, in a major law firm. And some small law firms also will bill a lot of hours. Like law firms will say, oh, we're a lifestyle firm, but there's no firm really that's a lifestyle firm. The reason being that when work comes in and there's fire drills and things, the work, people need to work long hours. Now, there are firms that represent smaller clients and aren't doing the most sophisticated transactions for them. They may be doing just like general corporate work, and then the most sophisticated work will be farmed out, and you may have more of a lifestyle there, or they may be employment firms that do more advisory work. I mean, there's small law firms that are lifestyle firms, but for the most part, they're not. In the geography you're in, the larger the geography, the more demanding it's typically going to be, and people will typically work much more higher hours and have to work harder in larger markets to justify their salary than they may in smaller markets. So you need to put yourself in an environment where you're happy working long hours. And if you don't think that's something you're going to be happy with, then you should seriously consider, why am I trying to work in a major law firm, especially if I'm not enjoying the work. And so people that work in environments that require the most work is often not going to make you happy. And one of the things that I don't like, I just keep seeing it again and again and again, and I see it consistently, meaning if I'm working with 25 candidates from AmLaw 100 law firms, and they're doing their job search and they're coming up against some resistance, and they're thinking about all the hours that they have to work and how they hate it, they will often just drop out of the practice of law completely. And they do it when they have these just extraordinary pedigrees, law schools and firms in the background and stuff. And so many times if you get into a firm where you're working very, very hard, you may think, I don't even want to practice law anymore. And I see it all the time. And people will think, I don't want to go to a smaller law firm because that won't look good to people I went to law school with or people I practice with. And so they will just say, hey, I'm going to do something else completely because they think that's cooler than going to work at a smaller law firm that looks better. They kind of involve their ego and everything. So you need to really think about, is this extreme workload something I want? I'd say you're very smart and intelligent. You got into a large law firm. People get into these positions all the time and fail because they don't want to work as hard. I've seen so many stories of people that got into large law firms and just didn't bill enough hours. And when they didn't bill enough hours, they thought that they were just going to be able to coast by. They didn't want to be partners and things, but it will always come up against it. If you're working at large law firms, they need to bill as many hours as possible to be evaluated like that. And so, is that what you want, or would you prefer a smaller law firm? People will compete very, very hard to go in-house because those jobs typically don't require the most hours. You can do all sorts of things. You can be a sole practitioner and very, very effective in different practice areas and make a lot of money. Or sometimes people are more suited to academics, to teaching. There's a lot of people like that that would do better and be happier doing that, or public interest type work. And if you don't have an extremely strong work ethic, putting yourself in a position where you're going to be judged based on that is not good for you. And, and working in markets and trying to work in major firms where that's happening, if you don't enjoy it, it's not good for you. So you need to really think about, is my work ethic, is this something that I want for myself? And it may not be. Again, people that go different paths and don't work in the largest law firms are often much, much happier and more successful. I'm not saying that you can't be extremely happy in large law firms, but if you are the type of person that really likes the work you're doing, the work is fun, it's play, it's not like something that you don't like, you are interested in working on more and more matters and getting more involved and learning new skills, then it may be for you, but it's not for everyone. And partners that I know it's for are very happy practicing law. They have a lot of self-confidence. They love the work that they do. They write papers and give presentations and do all these things to be effective. So the next one is perseverance. So anytime you're in a large law firm, you're going to be in a situation where you're at risk of losing your job. And people lose their jobs in large law firms all the time, even through no fault of their own. In 2001, 2008, there was just huge recessions. In 2008, 9, I guess, probably maybe a little bit of 10, for corporate associates in major law firms, and tons of them were let go, like just entire classes. I mean, people, they would have, some firms in Silicon Valley, they might have 30 first years and didn't have any, all of a sudden the corporate work wasn't there. So they put them in different buildings without any work, so they wouldn't kind of infect everyone there. There was no work. They moved them to like buildings like a half mile down the road, and then they let them go. And but at that time, there were so few jobs for corporate attorneys. People were losing their jobs and didn't have the ability to get jobs in other firms because there were no openings. But at the same time, I saw a lot of attorneys when that happened to them. It might have been first years or third years or seventh years. They didn't give up. A lot of those people, where it happened to them, they gave up. They did different careers. They moved home. They spent some time. They went to business school, all these different things. But if you want to succeed, you have to realize that large law firms will let you go from time to time through no fault of your own. You can get fired. All these things can happen, and you can often get defeated. I see first years, a lot of times they get into law firms and they don't understand things, and they may be very, very intelligent, but they lose their jobs very, very quickly. And when they lose their jobs as a 6-month attorney or an 8-month attorney, they often will just give up and not try to stay in large law firms, even though there's no reason they shouldn't try. And so you need to understand that when you're in the largest law firms, you're going to come up against potential layoffs. You're going to come up against things that are very competitive. You're going to come up against setbacks, meaning you will have done something wrong, will tarnish your brand, and you have to keep trying. The largest law firms, some of them have classes of like 100 first years that come in after law school, and that 1 or 2 of those people may be there after 12 years. And often it doesn't mean those 1 to 2 people, those people that left, are not leaving because they've gotten fired. They just don't persevere. And the ones that do persevere are the ones that become successful. They have faith in themselves. They don't they don't listen to arguments that they're not qualified enough to work in these firms. And they always believe that they're going to do well, and they just kind of hold on to that, and the ones that don't believe in themselves, which are the majority of attorneys and firms, they just think they can't do it. They think it's too competitive. They just they want to go to a different environment, and they give up. Those are people that often, that's what happens to a lot of people. They just don't persevere. You really need to believe in yourself and persevere if you're going to try to be in the largest law firms. When I was a third-year associate at my law firm, I remember there was a senior associate, not that senior, like 6 or 7 years, and he was joking with a partner. We were at a cocktail type party, that no one ever makes partner at the law firm. And this was a Los Angeles office of large New York City law firms with Dewey Valentine's no longer around, and they'd only made 1 partner in the 15 years the Los Angeles firm had been open. And the partner said something that I thought was very funny. He said, people don't make partner here because everyone leaves. And meaning they never even have the chance to become partner, because by the time they would be considered, people have just left, meaning the firm doesn't have the ability to make partners because everyone's left. And so, you really need to believe in yourself and persevere, and you need to be able to stay around when others are leaving. You need to not believe rumors that things are bad at the law firm. You need to be able to keep your faith if your work slows down. You need to be persevering in every way possible, meaning networking with partners, doing everything you can, billing as many hours as you can, and doing everything you can when you come up against lots of resistance, which you will. And if others are doubting, their abilities and leaving and not thinking they have a future, you need to believe that anything is possible and stay very, very motivated and continue to work hard. I've noticed that one of the things this is encouraging, if you want to try to get into a large law firm, I've noticed that law firms, the top law firms, will very often hire people that never could have gotten in there as first-year associates out of law school. They just didn't have the grades, they didn't have the pedigree, but they got into other firms that may not have been as good. And when they got into those firms, they were kind of ready to go. And the law firms hired them that wouldn't have hired them when they were first-year associates. And They also do that with partners that may not have been able to get into those firms when they were younger. It's just very, very common. But I think when I look at this and why this happens, because it happens frequently in my practice of placing attorneys, I believe that, if an attorney becomes an expert in a certain practice area and continues becoming more and more of an expert and working hard on it, there's not as many people that have 4 or 5 years out. There's not as many people they're competing with. Most of those people have left the firm. So example would be if you're a fifth-year real estate attorney in Minneapolis, which isn't a huge market, but after 5 years, there might only be 3 or 4 of them left that are fifth-year attorneys there. So that expertise can help you. And so when you get that expertise and you have something that's marketable to large law firms, then you're much more likely to get jobs. And the other thing that I think one of the other reasons that they do that is people that are coming from smaller law firms are excited. Like they're going to work really, really hard because this is a really good opportunity for them. Whereas a lateral from the same type of with a regular, with the good schools and that sort of thing background, more likely to not be as excited to get ahead. Whereas the ones that are really motivated to prove themselves and work as hard as they can are a better investment for the firms and a better risk. And so they want people that are extremely motivated. If you've gone to a smaller law firm and you've developed skills there and you're very motivated, then you may actually be a better asset to the large law firm if you didn't get started there. And so perseverance, extremely important. Partners need to persevere. Partners will often, spend years trying to develop clients and get different types of work and continually doing that and persevere against different odds. And they may also lose jobs and have setbacks. So it's important at all levels of your career throughout your entire career. And partners also need to be persevering, always trying to get more work, getting not their greatest reviews from their law firm. The law firms do review partners, they go over numbers and all sorts of things, and they may lose their jobs. Some of them have to move multiple times. I work with partners all the time that will have lost their job and be told they have 3 months to find a new one, and it might have been something as simple as a law firm doesn't want to have that practice here anymore, or the person's on the wrong side of a political issue, or people that are in power don't want them around anymore, even though they might have been there for 20 years. So you need to be able to persevere as a partner too. And people that are having problems in firms or trying to get new jobs will often apply to just a handful of firms. And when they don't get the results that they want immediately, or even after several months, they may drop out of the practice of law instead of trying to find firms in other markets or doing work on the ground, meaning applying to firms that don't have openings and networking, doing everything they can. They may not do those things. And if they don't do those things, it can hurt them as well. And they will give up. And, so your ability to succeed is really dependent on a lot of factors, but you always need to be willing to persevere. And I would say that this is not just for attorneys in large law firms. This is for all attorneys. I mean, you're going to come up against so much resistance and people not giving you work or getting fired or having political problems and law firms are doing something wrong. And so you need to be able to constantly be persevering and trying to find positions if you lose your job or looking at other markets and networking and doing all of these things. And, so many times, you don't need to have that incredible level of perseverance if you find a firm that doesn't require as many hours or isn't as competitive. But for most firms and places, it's important. When you're with the government, often perseverance is important. I've talked to sometimes. I have a friend that went to work in the Army, and he was in it might have been the Marine. I think it was the Army, and he was in the legal department there. And he was like, "This is just crazy. Like no one is working." Like, he was there for years and no one was really doing any work. And so obviously perseverance is important in all practice settings. It may not be as important in public interest positions. A lot of times it may not be as important if you're, teaching in law school. You don't need to worry about losing your job and stuff. It's not the same, but perseverance is extremely important. If you don't have it, then you don't want to put yourself in a position where you're competing against people from other backgrounds. So the last thing that's very important is your social or emotional intelligence. And people, like I said earlier, that do very, very well at this, even without the natural kind of intellectual skills, can still do very, very well, even without if they do this very well. And this means how people get along in their environment, and people that are very good, that have the work ethic and perseverance and smarts. If they're very good at this, I mean, the sky's the limit. They can do incredibly well. They have an awareness of how to operate in different environments. One of the things I'm sure that you've noticed, if you work in a law firm or maybe whatever practice setting that you're in, is that there's always people that will kind of be against the employer. They'll be sort of on the side of, things aren't good at the employer, or we don't like this, or we don't like these partners, or we don't like this about our firm, or we don't like this about our clients, or we don't like this about the type of work we're being given. And those people always end up on the outs of the firm, meaning the firm will not advance them. They will be kind of kicked out. And these are social skills, like not being involved in negative things, or someone that's seen negatively at the firm. And so if you're going to succeed, you need to be able to understand the people that you're working for. You need to be able to get along with others. You need to understand how to position yourself in like social environments and situations. And I will say just at the outset that this is not something that I understand very well. It's not a natural skill of mine, but a lot of people have it. And you do very well as an attorney if you have these skills. I mean, people that have these skills are never unemployed. They have networks of people. They do well in their firm, are liked by people, and not the opposite. They're liked by clients. They never get into conflicts, and they are able to, people that they're working with like them, above and below, and secretaries like them, and partners like them, and they just have that ability to push and put themselves in a situation where people think highly of them. And any law firm that you're in is going to have a certain type of social environment. Different firms have different cultures, and you need to be comfortable in the culture of the firm you're in, and be able to navigate that social situation. This is just, when I first started recruiting 25 years ago, one of the things that I thought that, to me was, I believe, very important, is one of the first articles I wrote it's called Firm Culture Matters Most. And so you may be in a culture right now that is just not a good fit for you, and the people may not see the world the same way you do. And if you're in that sort of firm, you could go to it and you might be very, very unhappy. And you could go to another firm that would be perfect for you, where you would understand the people and they would understand you, and you would share common interests. You could see yourself getting along where other people wouldn't. So, you need to be in that type of environment, and then you need to be able to succeed wherever you are socially. And people that have that are able to survive in very complex and demanding environments, and they're able to position themselves well to different types of people, and they have emotional skills. They don't get upset, and when they're able to manage their emotions, all these things, and how they relate to others, and the things that they tell them about and don't tell them about, and then keeping their personal life private to the extent that they can. And so, and comfortable around people, and people even in different firms will dress differently. Some law firms, the people will all kind of dress in a similar way. And so, you need to be able to navigate all this, and understand the social environments you're in, and how to relate to others, how to listen to others, how to give people what they want, how to not upset other people, and how to listen to other people. One of the things that I've noticed, and I certainly can't teach you social intelligence in a short webinar, but one of the things that I've noticed is people that do the best are often the best listeners, meaning they don't talk a lot. They just allow people to talk, and they pick up information that way. And they don't volunteer a lot of information. I don't know why that is, but it's something that I've noticed the best attorneys do. They listen to people to see what they're asking for. They don't make assumptions. They do the same thing with clients. They're just very, very good at this. And listening, I think, is one of the most important things that I can give you. Different law firms will have different types of social and emotional intelligence needed. You may, in a large law firm, need to be very good at impressing superiors and getting work. In smaller law firms, you may be in a small legal environment. It may be the opposite. You don't necessarily need to prove, to get along with people in the same way. It may just be not rocking the boat. There's law firms in small markets everywhere that may have 20 attorneys in them. And those attorneys, the majority of them, maybe 18, have been with them their entire careers. And that, obviously, those types of firms have their own sort of culture where you have to be able to get along there. And again, you may be in a firm like that right now that has a different type of culture. So understanding culture, social intelligence, trying to get people on your side, being seen in a good way is just important. And people that can do this are often the most successful attorneys. Many times, the attorneys that have the skill are advanced and the top partners in different types of law firms. I remember when I was practicing at my second law firm, I was working with this attorney that was a partner and had huge clients, like very big clients that were generating millions of dollars a year for him. And he was a litigator, and I think he might have been dyslexic, but didn't really have it under control. And so he had a very difficult time writing briefs and written types of work that were needed for kind of for those clients. And he never really learned how to do that, but he had people working for him that would do that for him, like myself. And certainly, realizing that was not something that I brought to his attention, but he just couldn't do it. But he had so much social intelligence in terms of bringing in clients and getting along with other partners in the firm, and it was just very, very helpful. And he was able to do well in different social situations and generate business and get along with others. And so if you're academic, that may not be as intelligent, as important. If you're in a law firm, you may be in a practice area that doesn't require a lot of interaction, which could be ERISA, patent, being someone behind the scenes writing briefs. There's positions where you aren't expected to be a superstar with your social intelligence, but it just kind of depends. And you may know right now, but I'm sure you know what I'm talking about. Tremendous amount of social intelligence, and if that's who you are, you can often succeed and get into large law firms and do well, even without the intellectual ability. When I talk to partners and things and associates in law firms, I often see them have done things that upset the social order of the law firms and things that are acceptable. Someone that might have had too many drinks at a firm party and stumbled outside getting an Uber, and people don't like that. Or I've seen a lot of people lose their jobs because they drank too much. I've seen people lose their jobs because they got involved with secretaries. And I had one guy that I was working with in Chicago. He had a $15 million book of business, and he had an affair with a paralegal 4 or 5 years previously, and then broke it off. And then that paralegal's boyfriend had known about it, and I guess after she had broken up with him, and then he found out about it, and he called the firm and said, "This is all this stuff that happened." It was a major Am Law 100 law firm, and they brought him in and they fired him right on the spot because he had an affair with someone that was subordinate to him. And major law firm mistake. I've seen people. I saw one guy fired from a big law firm because he during casual day he wore some jeans to the firm that had a rip close to his crotch, and some woman complained. I've seen people lose jobs for social reasons all the time, for doing things that were taken in the wrong way, that they made mistakes, and so having the social intelligence to know what's right and what's wrong is very important. People that are narcissistic don't necessarily always have the most social intelligence. People that may make inappropriate comments, be overly aggressive towards people of the opposite sex, create drama, be critical of the management of the firm, getting very, very mad when anybody criticizes their work, or going to work and closing the door and never coming out, and interacting with other people. I mean, these are all things that could be signs of not having social intelligence. So you need to think of, what can I do to have social intelligence when I'm at a firm? Can I be someone that's seen as always supporting the firm? Will I avoid talking about my personal life too much? Will I allow others to talk and listen? Will I associate with or not associate with people in the firm, or will I isolate myself? So you need to learn those skills to succeed. And if you don't have that, then it can hurt you. It can hurt you in the firm, but it can also hurt your advancement because you may not be able to get clients and have that. And so you need to understand, am I in the right environment? It is my social and emotional intelligence being valued there. And oftentimes you're just in the wrong firm. The firm may not be the kind of people like you are. And so you need to be around people that are like you. And again, if you don't have that, then your firm, oftentimes going into another firm can dramatically change the entire course of your career. So someone that may not have liked working in a large law firm because they didn't like being given work, they didn't like the inability to bring in large clients, and they may be much happier as a solo practitioner in another type of firm, values the way they think about the world. And so you need to be able to understand the type of environment that you're in, and how much put in your position where you're likely to succeed and be happy. The largest law firms do require you to be intelligent, meaning very intelligent, work hard, going to be unhappy. Certainly you may come up against resistance of working in large law firms earlier in your career and fix it later, but you need to really think closely about it. And this, when the Q&A is always, for me, is like one of the most, the funnest parts of my week, because I love hearing people are thinking, and it can, I think a lot of times the questions and answers can really help you a lot. I'm not going to answer these in any particular order, but I would encourage anyone that has questions to ask them. Okay, with the rise of remote hybrid work environments, traditional opportunities to build relationships like firm lunches or in-person events are becoming rare. How can attorneys develop and showcase strong social skills when much of the interaction is virtual? Other specific ways to stand out and make a lasting connection in a more virtual environment? Your skills are going to be, your ability to kind of advance is going to be based on your hours. It's going to be based on the interaction you do have, because and most work is not going to be 100% virtual, meaning people need to be with clients, and you will need to be in the office or working with people directly. One of the things that I think I've seen a lot of attorneys do very well is they will they will manage to connect with people in different ways, meaning they'll see an article that looks really interesting about their practice area. They'll send it around to people that they're working with. How to bond with people when you're not in a traditional work environment, when you're in a position where you're working virtually, like what do you do to stand out? My advice for that is, what I've seen people that do that really well is they do things like they will circulate articles, they will be very responsive, they will look for any opportunity they can to interact with people, meaning they will, anytime they can go out on a client meeting or anything along those lines. Anytime they can go out on client meetings and things, they'll do that, and they will make an effort to interact. And so that's kind of how I would recommend. If you have a follow-up question to that, the biggest thing would be to just make sure you put yourself in a position where where you're able to interact with others. For some reason, when this disconnected, if you would like to type in questions again that you may have had, because I don't have any right now when my computer restarted, I will give everyone a minute or two. If not, we will complete. All right, well, it looks like there's no more open questions. Apologize for this technical snafu. Next week is Wednesday, and we won't have a webinar next Wednesday. One thing I just wanted to bring to your attention. Oh, here we go. Yeah, and if anybody has any additional questions, just ask them, the ones that you may have asked before. I just had an issue with my computer having to re-log into Zoom, and it created this issue. Okay, I practiced successfully in the U.S. Justice Department for several years, Civil Rights Inspector General's Office. As an aside, I'm actually familiar with the civil rights, and 1 year at a major law firm, and then switched career to a successful career in Europe as a operating tenor, and over 300 opera houses, but now very healthy, 76. Is there any possibility of return to some area less pressure law practice? Because I do expect it to live as long as my grandparents in their 90s. I'm not happy being a voice teacher. Yeah, so anybody can get into another law firm, even in your mid-70s. I mean, you have at least 15 probably years of practice left, and especially when you had the experience you got in the Justice Department. So the way to get positions in your situation is typically, if you apply to jobs on job sites and things, you're probably not going to get a lot of interest, because people are going to be looking for younger people. Even if you were in your 30s and have been practicing for 10 years, you would still come up against that issue. So the way that anybody can get a position, which I will submit to you, is extremely important for anyone in the legal profession. The easiest way to get a job is to find people that do the type of work you do. So maybe you do civil rights, maybe find attorneys in whatever market you're in. They could be they could be solo practitioners, they could be small law firms that maybe do civil rights plaintiffs work or just general litigation, because there are always people that will hire you. You just have to find people in firms that wouldn't necessarily do that don't have openings, that will hire you opportunistically when you come along. And people get hired like that all the time. You're not going to get jobs through job sites. Your best odds of getting a position are going to be when you research firms and find them on your own. So how do you do that? You would do something as simple as go to Google and whatever city you're in, search for attorneys that do litigation or do civil rights, find small law firms that do it or solo practitioners, and then send them a resume and a cover letter of why you'd like to work with them. You can also send it the mail, which is very effective because people see it that way. Or you can just, instead of mailing it, you can go and just email people within the firms. And this is how people get jobs all the time. I've seen a lot of people that are older like you get jobs that way. Okay, well, thank you everyone for being on the webinar. Again, I apologize that I lost a bunch of questions and we had a little technical snafu. Again, we won't have a webinar next week, but what I will do for people, I do have a course that I think could be very helpful. Let me see if I can find it. I don't have the URL, but I will send everyone an email about this course. This course that I've come up with, it's called Big Law Breakthrough, and it's without the course. I mean, I did like a 1-hour video that talks in a lot of detail about how people can move to large law firms or much better law firms by doing things with their resume, their cover letter, and improving their interview skills. And so that's a very valuable video to watch. And so for everyone that's on this webinar, I'll circulate that for next week. So thank you everyone again for being here, and I will be back 1 week from Wednesday. Thank you. Bye.